Hello everyone, I am Julian Morris with the Channel 5 News. In the headlines, the opposition leader walks back statements he made against the proposed anti-terrorism legislation and admits the bill does in fact address his concerns. Hurricane Maria leaves behind close to 8% decline in tourist arrivals for 2017 and mixed reaction from the Dominica Freedom Party on the island's post-Maria recovery efforts. The details coming up. First up in the news, the leader of the opposition United Workers' Party has apologized for misleading statements he made regarding a proposed anti-terrorism legislation expected to go before Parliament on Monday. The leader of the opposition says his concerns which led to his public statements on Tuesday were based on the broad provisions of the anti-terrorism bill. But he says in his cursory reading of the proposed bill, he omitted the sections which spoke to his concerns, which he now says the proposed bill does in fact adequately address.
Came to us Monday afternoon and immediately just looking at some provisions of it, especially where the offenses are concerned, some red flags, so to speak, were raised. All right? Because I had looked, for example, in part 2 of the bill, where a terrorist act is defined. And it simply says, terrorist act means an act which constitutes an offense under part 2, part 3, or part 4. So when I read that, being my initial read, I immediately went to part 2 and read offenses, which is what I read yesterday for you and which is what we discussed. Okay, I have since our discussion yesterday and our meeting of the minds in the National Executive on this bill yesterday, we are now satisfied that one of the main concerns we have about the bill is in fact satisfied in the provisions of the bill. At section 2.2, which does, let me say this clearly and issue it with all the sincerity that I can, and to apologize for those who may have been misled by my omission yesterday, acting out of a quick read that raised some red flags. The omission from what I was saying yesterday is at section 2.2 of the Act, which says that an act which disrupts any service and is committed in pursuance of a demonstration, protest, or stoppage of work, and is not intended to result in any harm referred to in paragraph A of the definition of terrorist act, shall not be considered a terrorist act. So you see, Matt, I'm apologizing now for coming to you yesterday on a very quick cursory read of the legislation, which focused on the section dealing with the offenses coming out of the definition of terrorist act, which says means an act which constitutes an offense under part 2, part 3, part 4. So I went ahead and quickly read part 2, part 3, part 4, which is where, especially in part 2, section 3.1, the concern that we discussed yesterday emerged.
Leadman says the opposition has good reason to be concerned about the proposed anti-terrorism legislation, particularly in light of statements that they were behaving like terrorists. In more news now, the Dominica has recorded a 7.8% decline in stopover arrivals for 2017, for the most part due to Hurricane Maria. Tourism Director Colin Piper says prior to the disaster, the country was on course for growth in the tourism industry.
This 2017 performance is heavily influenced by the impacts of Hurricane Maria. As up to September, as you've heard before, we were experiencing a 9 to 10% growth. Also note that in 2015, based on similar negative impacts of Tropical Storm Erica, we were down 8.6%. The takeaway is that post-Erica, our strategies and activities yielded results, and we were up in 2016, and we were up again in 2017, until Hurricane Maria scuttled our efforts.
The annual percentage decline reflects a plunge from 78,000 the previous year to 72,000. The numbers in visitor arrivals to the island for the first quarter of 2018 are not encouraging.
Now, as you look at 2018, you'll see that thus far, visitors to the Caribbean are showing a decline of 6.2% for the first quarter, January through March. And in the rightmost column, you can see that unfortunately, the decrease continues, and in January we were down in Dominica 48%, in February 44%, in March 17%. And so on average for the first quarter, we were down 38%.
According to a World Bank post-disaster needs assessment, the tourism industry needs 71 million EC dollars in order to bounce back. And still in tourism, authorities will direct the focus on a pre-Hurricane Maria project for yachting development for the new financial year. They say they have seen a need to aggressively expand investment in yachting infrastructure. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Corinne Prevost, said the project was put on the back burner for obvious reasons, having to deal with coastal debris after the hurricane.
Prior to Hurricane Maria, we had put together a project for yachting development. However, we were not able to fully implement this project because what we saw is that most of the jetties were damaged, particularly in the south. And of course, there was a lot of work to be done on coastal cleanup prior to having yachties return. Enhancement of beaches, particularly along the west and northeast coast, is also on the tourism agenda. Last year, we decided to focus on yachting. However, during the year and based on the impact of Hurricane Maria and what we realized we had to do after Hurricane Maria, we've expanded that project now to a coastal and marine tourism project, which will encompass coastal cleanup, coastal protection, support to the yachting sector, support to the water sport sector in general, to include dive, snorkeling, and also some beach development. I mean, in the past, we may have said Dominica is not known for beaches, but we do realize more and more, particularly even with the cruise passengers, that we're seeing a greater interest in our black sand beaches.
Two Portsmouth-based entities have teamed up to restore functionality to the pier at the Cabritz National Park, Andrea Louis reports.
Range Developments, under which the Kempinski Resort is being constructed, partnered up with Pacific Hope, a missionary vessel, to undertake renovation works on the Cabritz Pier, which was destroyed during Hurricane Maria. The project will be done in 3 phases, and the captain of Pacific Hope, Marvin Wilson, says the refurbishment of the pier will see increased tourist activity in this part of Portsmouth.
We're going to do it in 3 different phases. We've almost completed the first phase, which is the main wharf going out to where the ship is now. And then we'll continue on to do the starboard and port side of the pier here in 2 different phases. So eventually the entire thing will be complete. But I believe this is the first time in over a year there's been a ship on the pier here, which has been great because livelihood has kind of taken a new shape here in the park. People are diving off of the pier, scuba diving classes. Our ship is here, people are playing and swimming. So it's kind of bringing life back to the park here. So tourism is starting to come back.
The rehabilitation work done on the pier thus far was by all the volunteers aboard Pacific Hope and members of Range Developments.
So it was 100% our volunteers, and we are all volunteers. No one's paid. So it was 100% volunteers and all arranged. Right now we are at about 42, and we range usually between 50 to 55 volunteers. And we are going to be staying here for 3 years.
Another joint project between the two is the roof renovation on the center where adolescents learn to love and serve calls. Wilson says the volunteers of Pacific Hope are also passing on the construction skills to the Dominicans who are working on the project.
And one of our primary purposes is helping the island. So that is not only physically, but that is also helping get businesses coming back and developing. One of the neat things that we're doing with calls is all the young people that are there will actually be doing the labor with us. So we are going to teach them how to build roofs, how to cut, how to measure, how to work. And we're also going to be taking 2 of them onto the ship as 2 interns to work in engineering and deck and so forth so that they learn. We have done 2 houses already completely, 2 homes of people. And then we started on the pier, and now we're going to calls.
You're watching Channel 5 News. Coming up, how one woman is coping with bipolar disorder. Thank you for staying with us. Plans are afoot to renovate 19 to 21 buildings of the Dominica State College in preparation for the new school year.
A roofing project is ongoing at the lower section of the campus as part of Phase 1 of the renovation. DSC's Director of Facilities and Operations, Brian Mead, says September is the targeted completion date for rebuilding the college.
The second phase is going to be the other buildings in the upper campus. The damage that we had at State College is just tremendous. A lot of people really don't realize that. We literally have to not only recover the roofs on all 19 buildings, but we have to rewire and repaint all 19 buildings. How we're going to do that, I don't know yet, but it's an interesting challenge. And we hopefully can get that done before September of this year, before next semester starts. We hope to do that, but I doubt it very much because we are constrained by, of course, the weather and availability of materials.
A challenge will be to source funds for other aspects of the project apart from the re-roofing. The United Nations Development Program, governments of the People's Republic of China and Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela are jointly providing funds, material, and labor for the re-roofing.
So far, our estimate is over close to $8 million to refurbish and to renovate the entire college. So we have bids out to contractors to see, what they can come up with through that. But we're looking at about $8 million in damage to renovate. It's a lot of money.
What portion of the China UNDP aid is?
I'm not at liberty to say that right now. Yes. But they have procured the materials for us.
DSC management is anticipating that the completed project will accommodate returning students who migrated after the September disaster.
Well, original enrollment was 1,800 students, but after Maria we had about 1,200 because due to relocation of students to other islands. But we figure we are very confident that figure will get back up by our new semester in September of this year, because I'm sure that a lot of those students will come back to Dominica. We were pleasantly surprised and very happy to know that when we reopened on November the 6th, we had estimated to get about just 400 students because we were only reopening just for the second year students, and we ended up with an enrollment of close to 700.
2 buildings with concrete roofs housing the Center of Excellence were the only ones spared from Hurricane Maria's devastation. Idona Jean-Baptiste, Channel 5 News.
In agriculture, stakeholders in the agriculture sector will end the week better able to collect and utilize data following a natural disaster. This is among the outcomes expected from a 4-day workshop which ends on Thursday. Disaster risk reduction specialist with the FAO, who is on island for the workshop, says equipping agriculture officials with the tools and know-how on data gathering will help the industry revive better should another natural disaster affect the island.
We hope that at least people will have an understanding of what type of information are necessary to collect after a major disaster and how these information are collated, validated, and then analyzed in order to then, of course, report to policymakers, to donors, to international organizations on what is the situation on the ground after a major disaster, and then, of course, also recommend specific intervention which can enable the subsector, crop, livestock, fishery, and forestry to go back on their feet, basically, and operate at the same level or even better than before the disaster.
Borelli says due to the magnitude of Hurricane Maria's impact, the FAO has already implemented programs in Dominica and will continue to do so to help the agriculture sector's recovery.
Since Maria, FAO has implemented in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture about 4 emergency programs with different donors, funded by different donors, and we basically managed to bring in a lot of inputs, seeds, reconstruction material for animal shelter, for greenhouses, water tank, equipment of any kind, really to restore the agriculture sector and fishery sector, you know, and to enable people to start their production again, and of course generating enough food and income, you know, to support their households and family.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Dr. Reginald Thomas, urged participants to take data collection seriously, as it will help the ministry meet its objectives, especially post-disaster.
Again, to stress the point of data collection, from the ministry, it is a critical function that we need to put in place and to have it locked down, for use of a colloquial term, so as to ensure that if there are any events, that we are able to do the necessary work in the shortest possible time. We have been told by all the experts that we are to face, or we may face, more intense storms and other events. And so we want to put the necessary systems in place to ensure that if we are impacted, that we can react in the shortest possible time to ensure again that the clients whom we serve, from a ministry perspective, the clients whom we serve, we can provide that information that they need.
And 9 months after the passage of Hurricane Maria, the Dominica Freedom Party is giving mixed reaction or mixed ratings on Dominica's recovery efforts. Leader of the Dominica Freedom Party, Kent Vital, says on the issue of restoring utilities, road access and other essential services, those areas getting a nod of approval from the DFP.
If one were to look physically on the streets, you would see all the main roads being clean, and that's good. You would realize Dominica is working very hard to restore electricity. Water has been restored for some time. I'm not sure if every single system that was affected have been totally restored. In terms of telecommunications, clearly the cell phone lines are back.
However, the restoration of the housing sector, especially the disbursement of insurance money, is subpar in Vital's opinion.
In terms of housing construction, what we know is that insurance companies have begun to pay out. So more and more you see houses and roofs being covered. We do realize that often the insurance payments are not sufficient. So you may see the roof covered, but you're not sure on the inside to what extent that they have repaired their damage, the damage that they suffered. So construction-wise, we see some progress.
In the case of those who do not have insurance and need to fix their homes, Vital, while understanding the need of government to intervene, believes more transparent measures should be put in place and made public to help in this regard.
We are aware that the government has gotten assistance from overseas, or maybe they are putting some of their monies based on what they have said. Not their money, it's the country's money. It's not the government as in personally the money belongs to them, it's the country's money. But our concern is this, that this is not well done. Our concern is this, that there's no proper organization. On one of our radio programs, I challenged the government to indicate exactly what are the criteria for accessing assistance. Let it be very, very transparent. Well, everyone know what the criteria is for getting assistance from government. And if you were to do that, then everyone will know, okay, if this is the case, I can go for assistance. If not, I can. And if persons realize that they applied for assistance, they met the criteria, and they did not get the assistance, then they would be able to say, look, I've been wrong, and there should be a mechanism for persons to seek redress.
And since Hurricane Maria, Dominicans continue to face challenges of one kind or another. But beyond the obvious post-Maria issues, one young woman has also been battling with bipolar disorder. This young woman, whom you may have encountered full of energy and sometimes wearing a smile, has a deeper, darker struggle since being diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 18 and continues to struggle with its effects to this day. Bipolar disorder, also known as manic depressive illness, is a brain disorder or mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings that include emotional highs and lows or depression.
It has dealt with me fairly harshly, especially where some people are concerned, people are judgmental, and because I know about it. I read about it and I ask questions about it. I ask people what they know about it and I read books. So I know that it is a condition that can be controlled. That's why I take my medication. But some people out there might figure you're crazy or something like that, you know?
So there is a stigma attached to it?
Yes. There's the stigma that if you have bipolar, that you are crazy or you're out of your mind, but that's not the case. It's just a chemical imbalance, the doctor says, and then it gets you very elated or very depressed. I suffer sometimes more with the elated part of it.
When you become depressed, you may feel sad or hopeless and lose interest or pleasure in most activities. When your mood shifts to mania or hypomania, you may feel euphoric, full of energy, or usually irritable. These mood swings can affect sleep, energy, activity, judgment, behavior, and the ability to think clearly.
I get jobs. Normally when I send in my applications and I'm interviewed, I do get the jobs, but it's skipping them when the depression comes in that interferes with the whole process. You know, it's not like I'm dumb or anything. I went to high school, I had a little college experience, and I'm hoping, as you can see, I sell my little water and kakao sometimes and other little stuff that I make and my people make. So I just tend to live life day by day, expecting the best and not wanting to be on the wrong side. I always try to do the right thing.
Stoddard says her support system is mainly church, family, and friends. She says she has been subjected to suicidal thoughts due to being bipolar, but that's out of the question.
You can seek professional help from the doctors because there's help, and in the churches there are people who would really ask if you need help. So you can always talk to people in your church or people in school. I remember when I was going to school, the teachers were always overly concerned about me, and a lot of people are concerned about me, people that I don't even know, and they hear about me. So I'm just reaching out to people who are out there and they have this tendency and they don't know how to deal with it.
This lifelong disorder affects about 60 million people worldwide. To end the news, a look at the headlines again. The opposition leader walks back statements he made against proposed anti-terrorism legislation and admits the bill does in fact address his concerns. Hurricane Maria leaves behind close to an 8% decline in tourist arrivals for 2017 and mixed reaction from the Dominica Freedom Party on the island's post-Maria recovery efforts. Feel free to contact us at news@mapin2k4.com. You can access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the production team, I am Julian Morris. Thank you for watching. Join us tomorrow.